Okay, I found this old axe head in the woods, and it didn't look like it was in complete bad shape. I mean, it is pretty rusted and pitted. So I'm going to see if I can clean it up and attach it to this handle. Now this is a store-bought handle because I don't have any dry hickory at the moment. But anyway, as far as this goes, I think the only thing I have right now that can do this job is my little abrasive bit here. So I'm going to give that a whirl and see what happens. Okay, after a bit with the abrasive wheel, you can kind of see it is working. It is taking off a lot of the crud, but I don't think this wheel's got much life left in it, so I might have to find another means to do this. Okay, let's try the high-speed grinder. I'm going to be careful to stay about, I don't know, half of an inch away from the edge here, because I'll treat the edge a little differently. Okay, so as you can see, it looks like the angle grinder is doing a much faster job, and it actually feels pretty decent smooth-wise. So I think I'm just going to stick with that for now until I get the entire thing cleaned up. Okay, here's the intermediate step. You can see it's quite pitted. And let's see the reverse, also quite pitted. And the only markings I'm able to find on this, it looks like there's an M1 right here and then a number 1 right there. But anyway, I still think once I sharpen up the edges, this thing will be able to chop down a tree. So I'm going to keep on working on getting some of these pits out of here. I wish I had a sand blaster. That would have made getting in those pits a lot easier. Oh well, use what I can, I guess. Since there is some awfully deep pits along the edge here, I'm going to have to grind this back quite a bit in order to get a clean edge. So I think to do most of that grinding, I'm just going to go ahead and use the angle grinder. Yeah, see, there we go. Now it looks like I'm clean down to the edge at least, even though there's some pits a little back. Now it's time to flip it over and do that side and then that side. Okay, so other than a bit of flaky stuff along the edge, and yes, it did turn a little blue on the tip, but I am nowhere near done grinding this down or honing it, so I think it's okay. I don't think the heat went in far enough to make any difference. But as it stands right now, I bet you this thing could actually cut a tree. It just wouldn't stay sharp for very long. Anyway, now it's time to move on to some honing, I think. Maybe some more grinding. Okay, time for some honing. I got my little cheapy diamond honing stones here. This is 150 grit, 300, 450, and we'll see how that does. Now I just got to figure out what kind of an angle is this working on here. It's a pretty low angle, isn't it? It's about right there, I think. So, see how that's looking so far. Well, I still see marks from the grinder, so it's going to take a while to do this, but I'm going to do both of the edges, all 3 of these, and we'll see how things turn out. Now it's time to move on to the handle. There's one major thing I want to do to this handle, and that is strip all of this varnish stuff off of it. I'm not exactly sure about this, but I think varnish sticks to the skin too much, and it doesn't allow any slippage, and it causes blisters. So I'm going to cover this with linseed oil after I remove this varnish, because linseed oil will actually allow a little bit of slip, and maybe it won't cause so many blisters. Anyway, first things first, let's take off the wedge that they've provided and remove all that tape as well. And then we got to get the sanding. I'm just going to use some 150 grit. And let's see if we can take off, otherwise I'll put that over there. Let's see if we can take off all of this varnish. Oh, now it's raining. Anyway, the sanding was taking too long and I basically gave up, so I moved on to the spoke shave. This is actually doing a much better job at taking that varnish off. Okay, now it's time to sand off all of my rough marks that I put on there with my spoke shave. Let's get this clamp off the table first. If I can. Good grief. Okay. Let's see now. Okay, now it's time to see if we can give this thing a nice custom fit. So, looks like the entire head of this is just way too thick, so I'm going to have to thin it down a bit. I'm just going to use the draw knife. Okay, so I've got it to the point where the head is just barely starting to fit. Can't really get it off of here with one hand. But anyway, now that the head is just barely fitting, I'm going to start knocking it in there, and then wherever it leaves kind of like a scrape mark, I'll cut it down a little bit more. I've just pounded it down, and you can see where it's kind of catching the wood. Like right there, a little bit over there. So I'm going to thin it down wherever it's catching wood. Okay, let's pound it down on there with my useful pounding tool and just see where it catches again. Okay, let's see if we can drive this thing on here. Let's see here. I don't know. That's looking pretty good right there. Okay, time to fit the wedge. Now let's see, I want the wedge to be about as wide as the top of this piece of wood here. So that's about from here to about here. Do it with my foot. Okay, is it going in straight? Because once I drive this in there, that's it, it's staying in. So, yeah, I think we're going to drive this in right now. I just need to make sure this isn't going anywhere. Okay, and I don't know how well the camera can see this, but it has filled out that entire hole. So now it's time to trim off all this stuff and see how it works. Okay, so here's what we've got after I've sawn off the end and sanded it a little bit. And it's in there pretty tight. So we'll see. I'm going to take a few good whacks on a tree outside with it, and we will see if it survives. Okay, so I'm outside here, and I found a good candidate. That tree straight ahead there, that nice big one. That is a maple, and unfortunately it has been breaking off for the past couple of seasons. So I think it's about time to take the rest of it down and put it to good use before it gets rotted. So this is the tree that I'm going to chop. Okay, a couple practice swings here to see just how well this thing cuts into a tree. Not too bad. Now it's time for some boiled linseed oil. Let's see here. Let's fold over our cloth a little bit. Pour a little bit on a cloth. And we'll start rubbing it in. Okay, let's get some painting done here. I think I'll clean it up with some acetone. Let's see here. Careful around the edges, they are a bit sharp now. Okay, let's tape off the blade end. And I'll cut it later so it has a nice shape to it. But right now, I just want to get this protected from paint. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Okay, so here we go. We've got everything taped off except the top. I'll do that in a minute. And I've scribed a line on here at the same arc as the edge. And I'm going to cut it with the knife so that we can paint a nice shape into this. So here we go.
It's nice and warm in here.
Yeah, I've got the heater going right next to us.
Yeah, so I'm going to take off my gloves.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll put them in my pockets.
It's a good way to not lose them. Do it here. Let's rip the end off there. Ah, okay.
That's going to be hard.
Now see, look. Now we've got a nice shape to it. And I'll just do that to all the rest of the sides. Okay, time to paint. Doing some primer first. I couldn't get any tape to stick to this, so I'm thinking it's just going to have to get painted. So, here we go. Let's see, get it aimed down. Up. Okay, let's hit this with a little bit of red spray paint. This bottle's having some issues, so I hope it works. I don't think it's going to work. Yeah, I think it worked out the kinks. Okay, the last step for the axe is to remove this tape and see what we've got. So, let's see here. I will remove these last. So let's get this off of the side first, if we can. Okay, so we got another piece here, and another piece there. Okay, a little bit of black overspray there, but that's okay. Okay, let's get this done. Aha. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Okay, and there we have it. Let me make sure we're getting this on camera. A restored axe. Next step is to make an axe sheath and maybe give this a bit more sharpening.